Okay, here we are, another
Hi, Troy.
episode. Hi, Danny. The Danny and
Yeah.
Troy show. And
But tonight it's the Troy and Danny show. You're going to entertain us. I know you are,
I hope so.
right? What have you got for us today, Troy?
Yeah, well, as discussed in our previous episodes, we've been leading up to really a little image and brand of our own, and we've mentioned a number of times, which is Datalogical Services. And yeah, in this session or recording episode, we wanted to give a little bit more about that company, and also the best way we think, or one good way, I should say, of giving some details about it is to talk about our logo and the essence behind it. So let me share my screen and bring it up. Oh, by the way, this is our, oh yeah, so we do now have our YouTube channel, which this is now being posted to. We've got quite a few videos up already, and you'll see our logo there under our YouTube channel. But I want to jump over to our website, Datalogical Services, and bring up our website logo, which the first aspect to it, I think, is that we not only mention Datalogical Services, which is down the bottom, but we talk about Datalogical Systems. So Datalogical Systems actually came first when we were discussing, okay, what is a, we were, I guess, in some ways following the three-word aspect of what it is that we do and who we are. And our first website, which we bought, is Datalogical System. Sorry, Datalogical. Yes, that's right. Datalogical Systems. And I'm skipping down to here. When we open up data, this is a link directly to datalogicalsystems.com. We have a little narrative, and it's in a book type of view where we tell our story. And it opens up. We'll just go our mission statement and purpose to this page here, which is the beginning. And as it mentions, it was on November the 6th, 2015, when Danny and I first crossed paths, and that was in Bhutan. And since then, Danny and I have been just, I guess, staying in touch, communicating, working out what each other's doing. And it wasn't until last year, 2021, that we created Datalogical Services as a kind of second phase of Datalogical Systems. So I want to go back to this logo. And why we kind of moved, I mean, my understanding anyway, okay, we went up to Datalogical Systems because we had this understanding of the system that is related to data and a logical representation of that data and the system that encompasses it. And, you know, like those who have watched our previous recordings and episodes, we coming in at the fundamental level, this ground aspect and deep understanding of the world. And when we talk about data logical, in my mind, it's really about one way of representing the world. But it's when we've looked at that, there's something extra when it comes to what Danny and I are talking about, and it's a service that we are providing. So that's how we kind of, and it's a mirror image. I mean, the data logical systems flipping down and having data logical services, and it's in a shape of a circle, which I'll get to shortly, that just kind of emerged from what Danny and I have been floating around talking about, playing with since we came across each other in 2015 and realized that, you know, there's something here between us that we want to continue to explore. So it's not just the system, but what you do with the system becomes a service. And that is why we've got two aspects to what we are providing. Ultimately, now we refer to the company because actually we established a company after we bought datalogicalsystems.com and created this book, which describes the coming together of Danny and I. We said, okay, let's take it to the next level and provide a service around that. That's when this logo really developed as it is now. And became at a service, just a service, an action from the system itself. Now, as I mentioned before, it's no accident that it's actually making a circle. These words, data logical systems and data logical services. And why that is because of the aspect of zero. I mean, being a circle also, I mean, there's another aspect to circles as well, but one representation of a circle is zero. And the history of zero that, I mean, I came to learn just only from discussing with Danny and what we are presenting is that zero actually didn't exist for a long time. As in Roman numerals, there is no representation of zero, and it wasn't until zero was kind of considered as a number or as a object, as an entity, that further advancements in maths were able to be taken. And zero also represents not just when that aspect of zero came into play, when the mathematical sense, the advancement of these mathematical formulas that were now driving computers. And without that invention or consideration or realization that zero exists, we wouldn't be so advanced with computer science and analytics and what we can do now with innovations, particularly in the technological space. And on top of that, in what we've referred to in a number of different previous episodes, is this space of nothingness or emptiness on a spiritual level, where there is kind of a realm, a space for something to exist and yeah, referring that to a deep consciousness or deep to get to that understanding, a certain requirement of awareness where there is no, or at least there is no thoughts that can interrupt what it is that's going on in this highly complex, like the opposite of zero world that we live in, to yeah, recognize that comes out in this amazing logo that I just see so much story. And we haven't even touched on the aspect of there is now a circle of water, a splash of life, that water representing the fact that human beings are made up by 60% of water, and that if water didn't exist, we wouldn't have life on Earth, and the aspects of what water gives to not just a system, but also a service is neatly, represented in our logo. Taking it to the next point that obviously is there is that we have an octopus, and the octopus representing such advanced complexity in what is actually possible, and not just what I love about it is that it's not a human, it's an octopus, but there is a lot of history, a lot of I guess speculation or stories about how it is possible that the octopus evolved to be an octopus, how, and the experimentation around its intelligence, how advanced it is in not just being very intelligent, but its physical features. And then we have, talking about that, the 8 legs. Interesting enough, Danny and I were talking about this yesterday, is that this particular picture only shows 7 legs, which is another kind of interesting aspect, that there is a leg behind the scenes that you can't see. In, of course, octopus having 8 legs, but represented in this particular image, there is, we're showing 7, and obviously there's one that is not in the picture because it's just behind the octopus itself. So yeah, that is kind of my first go. I'm going to pause from my side and give Danny a chance to, I guess, address the things that I've just brought forward.
I'm just going to talk about to help people understand where we are now, what you're talking about, with a little bit more background information.
Sure.
Because you started us off in Perot, that's in Bhutan, Kingdom of Bhutan, and that has its own. I think I can safely use the word mystical aspect.
Sure.
And what the history of the country brings and brought to us, and the kind of energy it was that was surrounding us where we were. Right. And the circumstances under which we met was a happiness conference of all things, right? I mean, what would take people off of their couch, right? And get them to Bhutan for a few days to listen to people to talk about happiness. And both Troy and I had a chance to speak at this conference. I don't know if I'd really call it a conference. I would almost call it an event. And just to be in Bhutan for the first time was, very interesting for me, making friends, shaking hands with the king, right? And seeing some of the traditions and sites was all very interesting. And that's, as Troy said, that's where we met. And we had things to talk about. And I think subject matters and other influences brought Troy and I together.
Sure.
And you know, as Troy said, and not to go back over that, we started talking and found it very enjoyable. But the whole idea of happiness was the subject around which we centered. And of course, it brought to my mind the whole idea of, I said mystical, but also tradition and history, things that the West is not so good at preserving. You know, I'm in the US now, which is a terrible loss. But we decided to focus on what these traditions, some people call them religions or spiritual approaches to living, would bring to us. And it was combined with some knowledge I have of the foundations of Western philosophy and Western styles of living. Of course, Bhutan is not Western, even though it is, I believe, a constitutional monarchy. So there was, you know, with the whole idea of constitutions in Greece and all this, we started exploring not only the spiritual nature, but also the beauty that was displayed, and how tradition made its way into imagery, and the nature of the people who principally are, you know, have been relatively untouched for a long time, and who have, you know, the consciousness of wanting to have, like in Russia a little bit when there were tsars, of having, you know, the father of the country. And there were just some real earth-shaking wake-up calls, at least for me, during this. They were mythological and pagan kinds of aspects, which I like very much, and madmen coming into the country and archery championships. I mean, it was like being taken out of a place. It's like being taken out of a TV program, which I equate with the West. And then let's say the tube goes off, and then suddenly you start looking around you at things you hadn't seen before, that are of a totally different material nature, that really helped reintroduce me back into a world whose periphery I had explored many years before. So Troy and I started talking. We started putting together programs. We had people join us and leave us. And eventually, I think using Fibonacci numbers as a starting point, and I don't know if, I suppose we could go back further than that, but it's a convenient place of, you know, things like the Nautilus shell and other just, I won't even say coincidences, right? Even all the way to, you know, the Mona Lisa, and just kept looking into it and found out that, you know, Fibonacci numbers were brought to Europe by Arabs, and who had done some mathematical formulations that were far beyond what was going on in Europe, on the European continent. And then so we sort of back trailed, you know, where it came from, and then it became a mathematical configuration, mathematical formula, which led to the idea of zero. And only recently did I discover that in Sumeria, which is kind of a turning point I'll get to in a second, did I hear today in a seminar that zero, without it being what it is today, sort of like in the material aspect of being a number representative, that the Sumerians had seen the silence, the pause between things, which was necessary, even necessary in my speech, right? Which led me to think that, you know, in nothingness is everything. It can be manifest. Things can be manifest in this nothingness. And two ways of looking at it, you know, mathematics and its pure science, adapting even symbols that indicate there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
Or philosophically, we could get into the foundations of Buddhism and things like that, of trying to reach a state of nothingness. If me and my amateur explanation have explained it correctly. So we kept following it, and it's how it came into being. Now it's obviously a Sumerian invention, or what should I say, recognition, as I said earlier. And that led us many places. And I probably should just jump to the whole idea of trying to trace where zero started. And its multidimensional nature. So, of course, that you can see that in our logo quite nicely. And then symbols and symbology, because zero is symbolic as well. And one thing led to another, and we keep exploring. And then, of course, I'm asking Troy about this binary system, right? Which is not only, ones and zeros, but I long for the explanation of -1 as well. And understanding what integers mean, and trying to get a grasp on data science that Troy was talking about, or is talking about, to understand how we are reordering the universe by understanding for ourselves how the present order was established from our point of view. And even though things are in constant change, so we can't acknowledge that things are the way they are, because they're in constant change, and the moment they're one thing, then they change into something else. So you can see how the philosophical bent of all of this started looking into where Troy and I would go together. We're having this common base of understanding. And then, of course, I suppose in many ways, the octopus is a very exceptional being, because of its intelligence, its sentient nature. It's sometimes people think that they are not of this planet, meaning, okay, maybe they're the Sumerian, they call them gods, but space beings, right? And that take on different forms and different manifestations, which, whether you believe that or not, of course, allows the mind to go in not just 8 different directions, but a number of different directions. And so, we found ourselves much this way too, of being in a space, a very fertile space, as a sentient being, trying to understand things on a primary level. As I mentioned, we're talking about, a lot of people want to take credit for zero, but it's like, it's not zero that counts. It's what zero represents. As I mentioned, other different points of view, which led us mostly to its founding in, the Middle East and Asia. So, which is we found led us to discover many different traditional and reference points that Troy and I have been to before. He's a native Australian. I've spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia. We have a company in Australia. I've spent enormous amounts of time in Russia and Europe, and the East, I would say, with Russia as a buffer zone between Western thinking and Eastern thinking, applies a certain kind of flexibility to the mind, which we were exploring because things were coming up we hadn't expected. And, in trying to translate, I may say, I think you have better words for this, Troy, the world from the way it's represented now. Not so long ago, ink pen was everything, and paper and so on. And now everything is digitized. And we were looking at, just everything from NFTs, non-fungible tokens, to, where people are going in that nether space. And so the effect was to allow us to find a place where our minds could expand, and yet at the same time provide some information and some knowledge to other people about the flip side, that most people either condemn because they don't understand it, or try to understand how systems are applied. Recently, we talked about liberal democracies and liberal hegemony, and the whole idea of the West and its duality, and Christianity and its duality, good and bad, black and white, you're with us or you're against us, which is not the only way of looking at things.
Sure.
It's not just master slave. There's also an entity in the middle, which is called a free man, who is neither a master nor a slave. So I don't want to beat this to death, but I'm trying to very quickly give an appreciation for what it is you're talking about, and the length of time, that 6.5 years that Troy and I were exploring all of this, and then taking our experience and putting it together, me and innovation and management theories, and, making stuff happen, pretty much most of the Northern Hemisphere. And now Troy being in the Southern Hemisphere, we're looking at things and what we can do in our service with the systems that we know and control and devise, how to pull other people out of this quagmire that we've gotten ourselves into, which leads us to, follow the piper, as it were, and to an end that's not suitable to us, because we are, not in control of our own lives. And when we bring in this whole cyber aspect, we are even less in control of our lives. And that's why, Troy is a magnificent translator of how we get from yesterday to today, and then how we navigate the future, which, by the way, is I don't know what you call it, but for Pegatron in Taiwan, their theme that I came up with, and it's really quite true. Not only for them, but for everybody who is trying to tackle the territory between material reality and non-material reality. I started slipping there for a minute, Troy, going down this slippery slope.
Sure.
Put it back in your hands. But
well, yeah, I mean, I can see this aspect, like putting in the context of system services and what comes out of that. Okay, systems, going back a few steps, actually, that conference on happiness, fortunately, was a system set up that allowed you and I to meet. And of course, there are many other systems that all over the world, and allowing things to happen. But this was a system, like we mentioned, in Bhutan, that is called the Gross National Happiness International Conference, and it was, if we go back, was it the 6th one? Yeah, 6th International Conference. So that kind of system allowed us to come together, and from that, it sparked actually a new invention. And like we were saying, okay, let's take it back to zero, what didn't exist. I mean, this is what's interesting about zero, is that it kind of always did exist, but it just wasn't recognized until you can look back in history. Okay, this was brought as a concept, and from that, new possibilities, new capabilities were brought forward, which allowed services. So just bringing in those words again, systems. Bhutan had a system set up that allowed people to come together and talk about happiness, or gross national happiness, which in itself is a system, but I don't want to get too far into that in particular, but it allowed Danny and I to come together and provide a service. And in essence, it's a service of innovation, a service of discovery, a service of analyzing what's happening. And it comes down to the deepest level of, like we've seen, let's start at consciousness and because why not? I mean, these are the things that I guess, not that we're aiming for any particular distinction, but it represents a distinction in ourselves, in our approach. And coming from that space, it allows us to have these discussions and come to some level of awareness of how magical or mystical, or the aspects of what it is that we are dealing with in life. And the octopus is an amazing representation of life, or what's possible to do to be done with all these systems that have been set up, which form planet Earth. Inside, I mean, planet Earth itself is inside a galaxy, inside a universe. And yeah, what are you going to do with that? And that's where the service comes in. And yeah, the interesting part is like, yeah, whether or not, I mean, it just sparks interesting conversation around, is the octopus an alien? And did that even come from a further, set of systems that's beyond the general vision or awareness or experience of us as human beings on planet Earth? But
Right.
the point,
We had, go ahead,
is the aspect of bringing new things in. And that's really my main motivation, my drive, what gets me excited is about this leading edge, whether it is to do with technology and data and artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and new devices and microprocessors, or talking about where the octopus actually came from. But the point is, like, these things came into existence, and that's really the service that I see us leading towards, is supporting new inventions, and the basics of that is just recognizing the systems that allow for new things to exist. And from there, it's really, that's where you get the unlimited capabilities, unlimited possibilities,
right,
of creation.
I think it's easy to see that we have been exploring new worlds,
Sure.
right, to us. As much as the film we did recently on navigation, right, and riding the keel and making sure you're seaworthy for where you're going and what you're doing, that you can derive some benefit from it, and also be open to the idea that there is a world beyond the material world. You could even say that's the area of thought. But as we explored all of these different avenues we haven't considered before, whether it's Zero or Fibonacci or the Anunnaki, which are the name given to a theoretical or proverbial, much documentation in Mesopotamia going on now about beings from space who came to Earth and who pretty much answered the riddle for me of the missing link, because these characters are supposed to have genetically engineered humans, bipeds from the ape, and long history, long story there. But we had considered, with that information, that inspiration in mind, suddenly, overnight they're farming and they have writing and, the wheel and all this other amazing stuff that is traced back to Sumerian culture, that they theoretically came from a planet called Nibiru, which, is another story as well. I won't allow that tangent to take me with it. But we thought, well, let's start a new world, Troy and I, right? And redesign the one that we were given and screwed up royally. And in order to do that, we would take the programmers of this new being, this new world, this digital world, with all of its representations, like cyber currency and whatever, you name it. It's all digital now. I mean, what is real and what isn't real? That everything that's going on in our mind, we swear is real, right? In one way or another. So it's sort of like we're like a screen, and we are being projected upon by many different aspects that influence our ability to either absorb them into our lives or allow the representation of those ideas in some sort of mental pictures to guide us somewhere else. So then we took the idea of starting a new world, with using the I guess you could call some people prefer the word mythology, but I prefer a stronger word, the legend or whatever, of what all of this information I've given about the Anunnaki, the space beings, that whether it's true or not, it is again, I couldn't say it's not important, but we used it to think, okay, if we're introducing people to a place where they could be totally free, and without regulations, and allow them to manifest themselves without limitation in a new world. And I think that has led us, and there's a couple of subjects in there, Troy, I'd like for you to talk about, led us to exploring, and I won't steal your thunder, other areas in which our thoughts are being placed that aren't a part of our present reality. You know what I'm talking about, Troy?
Yeah, well, if I can go back again to this story, because the second, I mean, after that page there of where setting the scene, where it begins in Bhutan on this particular date, there was an event that happened. And as we describe it here, Danny took the stage and presented an approach for producing automated and self-regulating measures of happiness that could be applied to financial transactions using digital currencies, a blockchain solution designed to create highly liquid, self-regulating values-oriented peer-to-peer cross-border digital medium of exchange that connected any commodity producer with any buyer. And as continues, is this really caught my attention, and was this Deus ex machina moment where I could see an unexpected, I mean, it was just something coming out of this. Now I knew why I was there and what was meant to, come from it, at least to some aspect of future application or pursuit. And yeah, since we've been talking about that, others have been coming up with this, new global digital currency. Of course, cryptocurrencies have been doing so much in such a little amount of time, and since 2015. And I remember you coming with a Bitcoin and showing that around, and at that time probably was only worth, maybe a couple of $100, maybe $300. But yeah, people are jumping onto this. And when we're talking about new worlds, of course, in the digital space and in the technological application of that, we have virtual VR worlds, and Facebook, jumping on top of that with Meta, converting their name to Meta in the aspect of metaverse. And these metaverses now being a reality where you can put on the virtual reality goggles and hang out in a virtual space, meet, stormtroopers and different characters of whatever they describe or require or aspire to represent themselves as. But what we're talking about is then using that technology to really take everything that perhaps is broken, a system that's broken, and re-establishing it from scratch. And we've been playing with that idea, and it looks like, I mean, in terms of the technological aspects, these new virtual worlds are popping up, and that is a real possibility. Now, whether that gets developed or not, what I think is the essence is the application of latest technologies in whatever settings or outcomes or desires that that seem right. And we're looking for people that are in these kind of same mindsets of what we're talking about when it comes to our logo, who wants to come on board and work with Danny and Troy and have this discussion and these opportunities for communication and collaborations, conversations that lead to new, exciting, innovative creations that can really make a difference in the world.
Yeah, I want to say something here, because I got kicked off of a think tank for something I'd like to say now, which was in line with what you're talking about, that what's happening now is the mind is a battleground. And I'm talking about the situation in Ukraine, right? Nobody knows what's happening, but some parties would rather lie to you, use your emotional aspects and the things you are preconditioned to believe and to accept, to guide you into a way of thinking that is not necessarily provable in the material world. And so they're manipulating people's sentiments, the way they think, of course, how you act, what resources you funnel in which direction. And we are very liable to being used. That we have come to depend on other people for what it is we are to think about, and how we are to think about it. And I think the U.S. is the worst place, and because with this liberal hegemony and the platform of our foreign policy, it does not involve freedom at all.
Right.
It's more like 1984 Orwellian way of living, with Big Brother, because we've been preconditioned to believe that, and they're just pulling us in, in the direction in which we were educated, indoctrinated, programmed, whatever, and it's prevalent for the masses of the people. And I think what you and I are looking for are the creative people, the people who are not going to be susceptible to being told what to do, or being a respondent, or being part of the masses or whatever. I mean, they can do what they want to do, and whoever is going to follow them is going to follow them. But I think that it's my desire, and I'm sure there are people out there who would like to manifest different realities.
Sure.
And we can do that in cyberspace with Troy's hand, especially in configuring ways in which there are independent bodies on the planet that are running the show, and they don't go by the name of government. you know, in a lot of ways, Troy and I have been, you know, chatting about this for a long time, is that we belong to a group of people that I classify as, you know, prospectors and cowboys, and I'm not a terrorist, so you know I'm careful in using my words, but I think you know what I mean. Cowboys and help me out here. You know, people who don't follow the rules,
Yeah.
who are labeled as bad guys because they don't think the way that the establishment wants them to think. I feel like I'm in the 60s now, right? And it's just preserving, yeah. It's just preserving our independence, our freedom of thinking, our freedom of expression. And if we've got to leave this world to do it, well, then we'll create our own Nibiru, right? Out in space, in cyberspace, where outside interests are not dictating where we spend our energy. I think it's essential. You know, we've got to do that. And then if I hadn't met you, Troy, I'd just still be talking about it. But with you, we can take or combine our experience with other people. You know, this is an invitation. Our videos are invitations to find like-minded people.
Exactly.
We're not coming to you and saying, look, we've got the solution, and for $9.95, we'll set you up and make you rich and, you know, happy. And it's like, you know, I don't know about anybody else, but I got a problem with that. You know, I really do. And the manifest reality of everything that we get smashed in the face with every day, it has a hollow ring to it.
Yeah.
And, you know, nobody's saying, what are the benefits we derive from this? Because it's all about money, right? Money makes the world go round. And if you aren't making a lot of money, not to say that, you know, we don't make money by providing services, but we have a higher goal than that, something much higher than, you know, being rewarded monetarily. And then what does that mean? You know, we're just poor men with money doing, you know, as well as Zuckerberg or Elon Musk does, or, you know, choose your example. And, you know, we may not want to rule the world. I think that's okay. Sure. But to explore and to, like the foundations of the US, you know, and those guys had heart, and they had courage, and they had, you know, they were philosophers, and they were planters and people who weren't, you know, born and bred politicians, to just continue a long line of stuff that leads us back to where we are today. You know, we have to reinvent this place. And of course, you know, that means that we're going to be targeted. And anybody who feels like, you know, their rewards are diminished because we're talking about something different than what they're talking about, that's just their insecurity, because it's going to happen, you know. And I think I've never really been a big fan of Elon Musk, but I'll tell you, I'm really wondering how he's able to do all this kind of stuff that he's doing from being, I think, a really simple man.
Sure.
You know, and I think that whatever is his way doesn't mean I have to replicate it. But you and I, in soliciting other people of genius, want to say, let's get together. We've got a lot of talents that we share, and, you know, we can manifest your ideas in reality. We provide a lot of different things, you know, organization, planning, proposals, even funding, you know, but you got to pass these tests. We don't want somebody coming in who doesn't know how to swing a hammer.
Exactly.
Or who doesn't know how to cook their own food. You know, you've got to be multidimensional, because what we're talking about is an integral system, right? Sure. We bring in the essential. This is not about political theory, about bringing in all the migrants from around the world because we're Democrats. I don't trust it. You know, so we're on a very high intellectual level, very open, very communicative, very talented people who want to create a new world.
That's right.
Did I misspeak?
No, and that those that kind of resonate with that, those that recognize what we're talking about and can feel some sort of aspect of you know, feeling the same way, that's, you know, what we're looking for. Is there any, and maybe, I mean, I'm sure there will be, but maybe there's no one, but that's not going to stop us from doing what we're doing. And
That's right.
yeah,
It's the call of the wild. You know, we're howling. And
yeah,
when wolves howl, they're not howling to one other wolf that's, you know, at point 3 over here. It's a broadcast, right?
sure.
And
Yeah,
it's, I don't think we're like saviors or anything else like
sure,
that.
sure.
But it would be nice to exercise our creative powers with other people and
Exactly.
theirs with us.
Exactly. Yeah,
We know there's one other one on the planet, don't we? You and you to me and me to you,
sure, sure.
right?
Yeah,
And I
that's
think,
it.
you know, and people, I think, are very unhappy, at
Well,
least from what I hear and what
yeah,
I see. And that's because they're chasing a rainbow.
I think there's a lot of broken systems out there, and recognizing that is the first step. And a lot of people, I mean, it just because of marketing, media, mainstream media, and, you know, these big kind of regulatory bodies controlling the narrative, it gets kind of overlooked that, hey, that's not right. What, I mean, going back to Russia and Ukraine and the US, which, you know, is coming more public now, is that it's a proxy war. The US or NATO is just using Ukraine to fight its battle, and they don't care if every single one of Ukrainians, you know, dies, but they are taking all measure to um, ensure that they have some level of increased power, and that in itself is a broken system I see, not a world I
The
want.
aphrodisiac.
That's right. Some things that they're driving them, and it's time for people to recognize it and take action and say, okay, yeah, let's do something different. And that difference is, you know, not, and it's about establishing communities that allow for freedom of speech, like you were referring to, allowing freedom of action, free will, as well as courage and being courageous to try something. And this is what, going back to virtual worlds, you know, we have this technology now where we can simulate, we can emulate, we can experiment, and just postulate what's going to happen or what could happen if we had a world where it was a lot different to what the current world and situation is like.
And all we have to do is communicate, right?
Sure.
And it could be anyone, anywhere, who, of course, you know, there's a great deal of exploration that goes on. You know, someone may see, well, this is a great advantage, you know, for me to take unfair advantage of these two guys and what they're doing, right, to further my own ends. And I'm a part of the system. And it's like, I'm sure we're going to get those guys. You know, I get them all the time on LinkedIn, right? It's all the time. Everybody wants to be part of my group, part of me. And it's like, you just want me to recognize you. Because how many, I limit myself to, I think, very, very difficult to say no. Now I just don't answer. Right. And it's like, no, I'm not hiring. You know, I'm looking for like-minded people. I'm not buying your time, right? I don't even know you. And part of our video series is to principally say, this is us.
Exactly.
There's no pitch. I'm not, you know, vying for your business. But if you see, like in real life, or what I know is real life, we takes time to get to know people. You and I, 7 years almost, right?
Sure.
And it's like took time. Okay. Oh, so the clock is ticking. And what? If I don't get this done by, next year, I'm a failure. No, it's an ongoing thing. It's a process. It takes time.
Exactly.
And I think what's going on for you and me is designing itself.
Yep.
Yeah, we have ideas. You can look at them. You can feel them out. You can read about them. You can, call us and talk to us or set something up or whatever. And if it's not right, we won't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not controlled by other people. That's why we have such poor leadership. They put somebody in office, I think, illegally. And then, they pick somebody who doesn't have a mind of his own. So they can run the show. That much is clear. But you know what? You can't find that on the media. Why? Because it's taboo. And it's like, that's exactly what people need to hear. Sure. Without having to, run around YouTube or wherever and find people who speak their mind. And not just talk, but we need doers, we need ideas. We need occupants of a new planet.
Right.
Where we want to do it right. Yeah. Because, we don't want to recreate what we have already. That doesn't sound very interesting. And we have, and everybody should know it, the potential of creating a new world of man. Don't give me all these systems about democracy and all this other stuff. They don't work. Right. Where all the members decide. It's like, oh, great. That reminds me of a joke where, what is it? A camel is a horse designed by a committee. And I think, what is that? We're going to redesign the horse. It's just, there's so many things that are wrong. And I can just feel all the people, sitting out there staring at this video and saying, that's me. And it's like, yeah, we know you're out there. We are out there. And, this is a call of the wild.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So and every journey begins with a single step.
That's right. And this is one of those, I believe, and I sense it, a beginning step. I mean, we've been doing these series, our Danny and Troy show, for actually, it's been, almost, well, it's been longer than 12 months, as you can see in our history of videos. And that's the first, I think, aspect is this communication. And we're here communicating to each other. We're here, putting it out publicly to communicate to those that cross its path or come across what we're talking about, resonate, and, establishing this or building upon the community we currently have, which, like you're saying before, right now it's 2 people, but we're looking for others to join the community, to continue to collaborate through conversation and communication and see what happens.
Yeah. We have some guidance. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we're driven by the guidance of what we've been talking about in our logo. It's about, manifesting from nothing, zero, the mathematical aspects of invention, the nature of water, the natural components that, are fundamental, the recognition that it's not just systems, but it's services in terms of doing stuff inside your system, and the potential to create something that is totally, amazing as an octopus and beyond. So, yeah.
And we'll keep trying. we'll, yeah, I don't like the word try. We'll
Sure.
keep doing,
Yeah. we'll keep
Right.
going.
and the more we do, the more traction we have.
That's
Right.
right. At least, yeah, the more experience we gain, the more, lessons learned, and the more, I guess, of finding that path of least resistance.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
And water seeks its own level.
sure. That's another, connection there.
Yeah.
With our logo, but
It'll work.
hopefully, we've given
So-
some insights to who we are, what Datalogical Service is about, and what our logo represents, and the history behind it, the intentions and the fundamentals. And I think we're coming to the end of this episode.
And there'll be more. We haven't
That's right.
stopped. We
That's
haven't
right.
reached an end. As a
Exactly.
matter of fact, without telling people exactly what's going on in our lives at the moment for the next week or so, right?
Sure,
We're in for some magnificent changes.
sure.
And you and I are going to take a couple of days off, right? And wish each other well for all of the magnificent things that we weren't expecting to happen in our lives, that we never would have imagined, sitting at home. We got to get out there, right?
Sure.
Stir the pot.
That's right.
Yep.
That's
And
right.
a safe life is not a life worth living.
Exactly.
We want to dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the adventure of what we have, what is coming forward, and what the opportunity of those present.
Courage, my friend. Courage.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I wish you well. I'll see you in a couple of days.
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Have
Thanks,
fun.
David. Take care.
Yes, sir. Bye,
Bye.
Troy.